Weeks after his company was found guilty of criminal tax fraud, Donald Trump himself is coming under scrutiny for a series of questionable financial practices. On Tuesday, the House Ways and Means Committee voted to publicly release 6 years of the former president's tax returns. Although it's expected to take a few more days for those returns to actually be made available, the committee did raise some questions about Trump's filings in two summary reports released after that vote. Among those questions, whether what was billed as loans made to Trump's children were actually loans or gifts disguised as loans for the purpose of avoiding gift taxes. The committee also flagged some of Trump's tax write-offs and whether he framed payments from his personal life as business expenses. Those include frequent trips on his private jet and, as the New York Times reported in 2020, more than $70,000 paid to style his hair. As for why those claims weren't audited, an internal IRS memo cited a lack of resources. The agency also wrote that it wanted to, quote, explore other options rather than risk worsening Trump's pre-existing animosity for the IRS. Joe, I mean, I don't know, $70,000 on somebody's hair. I mean, I spend a lot on my hair. I'm sure you spend a lot on your hair, but $70,000, wouldn't that trigger some little red flag at the IRS? That alone?
Mika makes me go out in the yard and she'll let me.
$7, not $70,000.
I get the hose, and then I've got some dog clippers, and I just it's very thick here. It's just outrageous. Everything about this is outrageous. And Claire McCaskill, you look, especially at the IRS. I mean, the further corruption of the federal government on all levels. Here, the IRS is supposed to audit every president. They don't. They don't audit Donald Trump. They say because of a lack of resources. It's because they were scared of him. They wouldn't even do what they're required to do because they didn't want to upset Donald Trump. He's a snowflake. He gets triggered. And everybody has to make Donald Trump believe, or had to make Donald Trump believe, that he was bigger than the office himself, which is why he's likely going to get indicted by the Department of Justice because he stole government documents.
Oversight matters. Oversight really matters. And I think the most important thing about what this committee has done is exposed that a mandatory requirement in our government that every president be audited, that had gone on for more than 40 years. Obama had all the audits. Joe Biden has had the audits. The only president in all these years that didn't get the mandatory audits while he was president was Donald J. Trump. Now, that is a blockbuster oversight finding. Forget about everybody worried about the privacy of his tax returns and all that. The fact that the IRS was shielding Donald Trump because they were afraid of him is outrageous. And I bet we'll hear a lot more about this. And I think some heads will probably roll at IRS over it before it's all said and done.
Well, I mean, you know, what is amazing to me is the fact, Elise Jordan, that Donald Trump lied for years to his voters. He lied for years to his supporters. He lied for years to the New York Times. He lied for years to the Washington Post. He lied to everybody saying, I'm under audit. And what do we find? Not only was he not under audit, but the very audit the IRS was required to do of his taxes, they didn't do. So, of course, it's not just a lie. I get it's an extreme lie. It's actually even worse than the New York Times and all of his political enemies, as he liked to call them, ever suspected.
Joe, I like to say I'm done being shocked by Trump and how he gets away with absolutely everything. But here, yet another example. Jen and Aaron said just like, oh, another example of something that a normal person, that a normal president would have had to undergo. And yet he's completely free of any consequences, as always. And so that's what I'm watching in 2023. Is Donald Trump finally going to face any consequences for the illegalities that have plagued his presidency and his entire life and career?
There's also a reason. I mean, I think I worked on 3 presidential campaigns. I don't think I was even aware you didn't have to release your tax returns on presidential campaigns. That's sort sort of what you always do. But there's a reason this is important to come back to. The American people deserve to see what people's investments are, whether they have conflicts of interest, when they're going to be governing the country. This is all important to see. And this audit has been in place since Nixon. This has been in place for decades. So I completely agree with Claire. There are going to be some heads that roll. This is not the kind of thing that just happens in Washington and nobody follows up on it. And there's more to see in these tax returns as well, for sure.
And again, it's just remarkable what a delicate snowflake Donald Trump is, that people were scared. Oh, we don't want to audit him. We don't want to do our job. We don't want to follow the law because Donald Trump might get upset. Because he's so frail. He's such a snowflake. He's so easily triggered. I mean, that's the great irony. Throughout 2020, I had to look at Trump flags up and down the East Coast that said, F your feelings, Trump 2020. See, that's the funny thing. They're actually, Trumpists act as if it's everybody against them that are the snowflakes, that are triggered. They're the ones who are the biggest snowflakes of all. What did we hear after Donald Trump lost an election? Oh, you know what? If you will, just let him be a little bit. You know, the wee lad is sad. He'll come to terms with it. Let him come to, he's grieving right now. I don't know who the leprechaun was around Trump, but they were there. And that's all we heard. Donald Trump's feelings are hurt by losing. Just give him time. The little snowflake will grow strong enough to not melt. He never did. And we almost lost our democracy because of it. And he's still triggered that the IRS might do their job, triggered that he might have to do what every other president has done in recent memory. Just never did it. He just never did it. That shouldn't be a snore. That should not be a star by CPAC. That should be a snowflake, because that's what Donald Trump is, and that's what Trumpists are. They are snowflakes that think that if the rules that apply to everybody else applies to them, they will melt. Poor things. Poor, triggered snowflakes.